Hello and welcome to the Creative Nectar podcast. We are so glad you're here. If it's your first time, I am Stephanie Gray.
And I'm Jenny Hahn. Hey, everybody.
Hey, if you're coming back again, thank you for returning. We love that. Um, Today we're talking about something that's kind of I mean, it's multi-layered, isn't it, Jenny? We were
Oh,
talking
yeah.
off before the recording, and it's just like, wow, there's so many layers to this. But today we're talking about, is your consciousness being hijacked? How to creatively follow your inner yes.
Mm.
It's a big one. It's a big one. And we're going to try in as much as we can to unpack that and share some of our examples and what we're talking about. Um, because yeah, it's a big one. So we're glad you're here, and we're going to just dive right in.
Sounds good. Yeah, this is
Yeah,
big.
it is. It is. So Jenny, when I say discovering your inner yes or following your inner yes, what does that mean for you?
Mm. Well, for me, I kind of tie my inner yes and inner no to, I think of this compass, like this inner compass in me. And I think I kind of equate it with what we would call intuition. But not intuition alone. I was thinking on this, and one of my teachers talks about in neuroscience. Now they talk about that the body technically has three brains, not just the brain in our heads, but that the heart and the gut also would qualify, if you will,
Yeah.
as brains with neurotransmitters, with the way they process information. They do it differently, but it's like when I think of my inner yes, I think of all three of those brains kind of in alignment, communicating, firing together, if you will. But, it's not just a head decision. Like my yes, it comes from, yeah, does come from my heart. It does come from my gut. It's like when my body feels, there's so many different ways this can be perceived for different people, but for me it's like this feel, it's like where every cell in my body is either saying yes, let's do this, or no, like stop.
Yeah. It's visceral. Like you can feel it.
Visceral, yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think the reason I was so excited to be talking about this today is because I didn't even know what any of this meant until I started to process paint. Yeah, I was so
Mm,
frozen from the inside out that I didn't know how to discern it. And it was
yeah,
only as I slowly began to come into my body and then into my heart and into my gut and incorporate and clear out a little bit some of what was going on in the brain, because there's just so much of that
right.
programming going on all the time. It wasn't until then that I realized, oh, I don't want to be doing this. Like I think I was doing dots or something, and I'm like, I don't want to be doing this right now. But something inside told me, oh, you need to finish this before it's time to go.
Mm.
Why?
Right. Who is that little voice in there?
Yeah, is this true? Who is that talking?
Right, right. Well, and I think that's what when we talk about is your consciousness being hijacked, like what does that mean for you, Steph? Like in what ways do you feel like your consciousness gets hijacked, and by whom or by what?
Yeah, I feel like, oh my gosh, I feel like it can get hijacked a lot. Mostly it is right now through media, social media. Sometimes there'll be because I work a lot on social media, and sometimes there will be a song that is really prevalent that just starts spinning around in my head. And like, I literally that'll be something that's going on in my brain as I'm sleeping. And I have to come to it and say, I no longer want this in my consciousness. This is not mine, but it's just things like that. Or, um, still. parents, why do I make my bed every morning? Is it because my mother like instilled that in me? Or is it something else, or is this something I really like to do? And, like sussing that out. And it's really
Mm,
about, like we were talking about, getting curious about the feelings. Is this lining up for me? Is this lining up with what feels right for me? And a lot of times I'll be watching something on Netflix or whatever, and it just doesn't feel right. And I'll catch myself being like, this doesn't align to me, it doesn't feel good to me, and yet I'll still keep watching, and then I have to go, "No," and make like an actual concerted effort to stop watching. And
mm,
it's those little things that I never would have even been aware of had I not started the creative process. And I sometimes wonder if
right.
people even like I know I never thought of using the creative process to get from that to where I am now.
Mm. Beautiful. Yeah, there's so many there's so many inputs that we're like processing all the time. I mean, yeah, like you said, expectations from others, from culture, from media, from parents, from bosses, from whatnot. When I think of consciousness being hijacked, even beyond the sources of it, I was thinking about how that can play out, how that can look with my own thoughts. And sometimes if there's obsessive thinking or obsessive worry or trying to kind of keep control of things out of a sense of obligation for whatever reason, or just making like quick decisions from the mind without the engagement and the involvement of the heart and the body. Maybe things that are mechanical or habitual, or for whatever reason we were raised with it. We were taught in school. There's so many ways that I believe our consciousness can get hijacked. Um, and we say, that phrase sounds so intense, but you know
It
what I mean?
does.
It's like when you sit down to tune in, or if you practice meditation, that's when you really become aware of the monkey mind, right? And and we're not talking about that somebody's like taking over your brain and like, or maybe they are, I don't know, but it's just these the brain in our heads, they can get in these loops. And it's like, I think it's really skillful to stop, to pause, and to begin to just notice. And it's not that we're trying to get the thoughts to stop, we're just bringing awareness to the process, to the thoughts, and then beginning to inquire, like you said, of whose is this, where did this come from, and is this serving me, or can I let this go? And then as we begin to like settle in further, it's like into the heart, into the body, like what is most alive for me, what do I most want? And beginning to really investigate that is a whole process in and of itself, which of course we use creativity to do around here because
Because
that's
that's
what
what
we
we do.
do. That's our jam.
It is. And honestly, I'm so grateful because I'm not, I've talked about this a lot, but I don't meditate well. I do it, but it doesn't go well a lot of the time. When it does go well, it's when I am creating. And
Mm,
and there's something I would never have known how beautiful it feels to really be aligned in that heart space without creating. And
mm,
I love what you said about just asking the questions like, is this true? Is this thought that's going on in my head, is this true? Is it even valid anymore? It may have been when I was two, but it's not
right,
anymore.
right.
And that's, I think, part of what we're talking about when we say, is your consciousness being hijacked? Just to be just to be aware. I can't tell you, since from when we started all of this to now, how many times I've had beliefs, like strongly held beliefs, that have shifted because
Right.
I've grown, I've changed, I've asked the questions like, is this real? Is this true for me? So yeah, I mean it's big and it's big to unpack. And then something that happens after that is like you were saying, getting in touch with your intuition, with the intuition. And then that helps with, as we're facilitating or, it just there's just layer upon layer.
Absolutely. Yes. And we have so many examples and of working with folks over the years and ourselves of, yeah, of that process of kind of uh, dropping from the head into the heart and the body. And I can remember one example of a woman I worked with at a workshop. And I mentioned this in my book, Creative Flow, which is now being released. But this woman I was working with, and she hadn't painted in a long time. She was getting ready to move. And so she kind of showed up with thinking that she wanted to paint an uprooted tree to kind of represent, how she was feeling. And she found that once she started painting it, she just was not engaging. She was kind of bored. She was kind of, it just, what the energy wasn't there. And as we kind of worked through it and asking questions, it's like what it came down to was it was her mind, it was her head brain that came
Head
up
brain.
with the plan that wanted her body to execute. And it's like, that's not what her body wanted at all. And when we were able to kind of, walk through that, and she was able to tune in and like really see what felt alive and interesting and juicy in that moment, she just felt like doing these colorful scribble, like these not scribbles, squiggles, like just really vibrant squiggles. And she ended up sharing that they looked like vegetables and fruit to her, and she was just like so delighted, and she just covered this whole page. And then it's like the page wanted to get bigger, so she moved it down onto the floor, and she ended up getting her hands and her feet in it. But she just like had so much joy and so much, like, you could see it in her eyes, in her face. And after that, I remember looking across the room later, and she was just sitting there kind of in this meditative state, just like bliss, peace, like that, that feeling of satisfaction, like. And so it was such a strong contrast to see that from the beginning of like, and I've been through this so many times myself, and I know so many of us have, where it's like we get on this track where we think we know where something is going before we can get there. We kind of plan out our creative action as if the mind alone can do that. And it's like, no, the body, the heart, the spirit, it all wants to participate. And sometimes that looks a little different from what we have in our mental plans.
Oh, I would say almost all the time, right? I
Almost
You
all
know
the
what
time.
strikes me, if I'm remembering right from the story you just told, you said she wanted to feel rooted and grounded, right? She wanted to, is that what I'm hearing?
Well, she was feeling unrooted and ungrounded from the move. And so, probably so. I mean, but it was like the idea was, oh, I'm feeling this way. I'm going to do this, not so much to get grounded, but just to kind of, I guess, to show where she was, or but again, it was
Sure.
a mental decision. I think it was yeah, it was like a premeditated idea that lost its oomph. And it's okay to start with those things, but then we use the compass of the body, of the heart, and see, okay, where's my energy now, and what am I needing in this moment?
The thing about it is, like, as I listened to the story and it unfolded, I realized that she ended up exactly, if feeling a little more rooted, a little more grounded, a little less untethered, you know, was part of why she was painting that to begin with, and then allowing the heart and the gut to speak. It just, I don't know. It's like the body, once she sort of surrendered to the whole thing and the whole process, she got there because she was like, it sounds like she was like
Right,
using her hands and her feet, and she was in it.
right,
Ah, I just think
right.
you're so, I mean, it's so true. It's so true.
Well, and it's interesting because sometimes it's so simple. what the body wants or what the heart wants. And to the point where I find this a lot in myself and with people we work with, it's like the mind will say, well, that's silly, or that's too easy, or that doesn't have any meaning or any story to it, or you know what I mean? Like all the ways that our minds can jump in and judge and say, no, I can't do that. That would be childlike. Or, but it's like, okay, where did that idea come from? You know,
Right.
whose thought is that?
Yeah.
And you know, we get so many ideas of what art is and what it isn't, and blah 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 blah. But yeah, if can we when we involve the entire body and the entire consciousness, it usually knows what it wants next. You know what I
It's
mean?
yes, and I'm chuckling because it happened to me personally in the studio just a few days ago. Like I'm working, so
Ooh.
I had a I had an image happen when I was doing sort of a meditative, I was in a meditative state, and I did have an image come to me that was so beautiful and so amazing. I'm like, I'm just gonna paint that. And I have been struggling with that image for I almost all year. And it's a big painting and I can't stand it. I don't like working on it. It's tedious, it's stiff. It's like I don't like it. And then I noticed I was in the studio and I looked over and there was a small piece of cardboard just sitting on a table and I just started making marks and it felt good to move in a way that it didn't matter how it looked. And I ended up getting so like drawn into that it's like I think I'm probably gonna just make marks on the other one that I started because it feels so good.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's, yeah, that's, I think that's part of the creative process, and especially with process art. It's like getting to that point of frustration and then somehow having a breakthrough, an opening where we loosen up, where we are no longer attached to the results. We're okay with it being destroyed if necessary, you know, creatively. But it's like that opens things up to that, I don't know, that sense of play, you know, that
Yeah.
it shifts the energy, and then maybe we go back into it, or maybe it becomes something else, a little piece of cardboard, like you said. It's, yeah,
Yeah, it's just just noticing how you can feel in your body like, this is tedious. It's stiff. It's, my head hurts. I'm tired versus, ooh,
right.
what's this? Well, it's a little piece of corrugated cardboard. What could I do with that? And then that you feel lit up and like,
Right.
yes, that big inner yes. So I wasn't even going to
Yes.
share that, but as you were talking, I'm like, that just happened to me. That literally just happened to me.
I love it. I love it. Can you describe like how that inner yes feels for you? Like how does that feel in your body or in your awareness? Like when you're creating, you mentioned feeling stiff or feeling stuck with something. Like how does the inner yes feel to you?
It feels full of wonder and curiosity, and it feels fluid and flowy versus stiff. And it
Mm,
like I do feel like my heart's engaged. And it feels like when there's an alignment, like even if you're putting a puzzle together or something, there's that piece that fits just right versus if you're trying to shove a piece in. Like that my whole body
right.
feels aligned with what I'm doing. And then I get into
Mm,
flow.
mm,
How
beautiful.
about you? Like, can you describe and just how that feels for you?
I mean, everything you just described feels true for me as well. It feels like I call it like a yummy feeling. I don't know. It's like
It's warm.
it's more, well, it's funny because yeah, it makes me think of the quote from the author Glennon Doyle in her book Untamed, where she describes her inner knowing as being warm liquid gold flowing through her veins. I'm like,
I mean,
oh, dang, yeah, that really
that's it.
that sums it up.
Yeah.
But it's a, yeah, it's not a contracted state. It's like a, it's a, yeah, it's relaxed and it's curious and it's aligned, like you said. And it's just this, yeah, this yumminess. Like, ooh, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's so hard to put into words that somatic experience, but yeah, it is a visceral knowing. Yeah.
And I guess the takeaway here is once you begin to discover that in whatever way works for you, of course, like you said, we use a creative process, and that's what we're going to be give examples for. But once you learn how it feels in your body, you can take that out into the world, and then you're using that internal compass.
Right, right. Yeah, it
Yeah.
goes beyond the studio for sure. It's with basically with just decision making in life, with all of our
Hmm.
decisions. It's like we have that inner compass that can guide us. And yeah, yeah, it applies to everything.
It does. Well, I see that
Cool.
it's probably time to give out some tools as we do. I
Yes, it
think
is.
I've got a few writing prompts. If you've got something as well, I can
Yeah.
do my writing prompts really fast, and then you can get into your suggestion.
Yeah. No need for fast. Let's
Let's
revel
just
in
do
this,
it.
man. Let's do it.
Um, so I have three writing prompts here. The first one is sort of what we talked about, but it would be interesting to write about, and I have before. And so the writing prompt is I feel most energized when. And just free flow with
Mm,
that, thinking about when you do feel energized. And then you can
mm,
reverse that too. I feel less energized when, or shut down or whatever. Um,
mm,
and then I'll do two. The second one is who or what occupies my consciousness, and am I okay with that? So now that we've talked about like
mm,
where our consciousness is and who or what is occupying it, like getting curious about that and writing about it. Yeah. So that's what
mm,
I got.
mm. That's great. Ooh, great inquiries. Thank
Yeah,
you.
sure. What do you have
Yeah.
for
So,
us?
okay. So for creative practices, and they again, I'm referencing my book. That's a brand new book, Creative Flow, because these are things that I kind of go into there. But for me, I think what I want to share is starting with an exploratory walk or drive in terms of starting to practice tuning into your body, your heart, and making decisions. And then this is something that can be applied to the studio. So let's start with this can be so simple of just walking out your door, if it's safe to do so, if it's the weather is okay, and just starting to see what feels like enticing, like which way do you feel like going? And just allow yourself to explore. And not because it's the way you usually take your walks or because it's the way the sidewalk goes, but just like what if you and you can pause, if you come to a crossroads, it's like pause and check in and see if you can get a sense of where your inner compass is leading you next. And
Mm.
this is something and this is something that goes way back to when I was a kid and my mom used to take us on drives. It was one of our favorite things to do with our friends is we would load up the cooler with snacks and drinks and all the sugary stuff and hit the road. And my mom, being the amazing mom that she is, would allow all the kids in the car to decide which way she turns next.
Ah.
And her being the parent, the adult, she usually made sure that we didn't get too lost. This was before GPS, of course, but she still had a basic sense of where we'd always end up on the outskirts of town somewhere. But something in that was so fun, and just to like decide, oh, where does this path go? Oh, where does that go? And so you can do this either in your car or in, like I said, by foot or on a bicycle, but just taking that exploration and allowing the decisions to come from within.
Mm.
And so
Yeah.
from there, if you want to take that to the studio, we do this a lot with process painting, but it's like just starting with movements and then seeing where it goes. And if it starts to become an image, like a specific thing, an object or a shape, it's like, well, see if you want to explore that. Like if that blob is starting to look like a face of an animal, it's like, okay, let's go down that road. And if it's starting to look like a, I don't know, an alien or a I don't know, whatever it's becoming, it's like following that path and always tuning into the body, always checking in with your energy to see what is most enticing, what feels the most alive and juicy and interesting.
Mm.
And that's the practice.
Yeah, I love that. I love that story. Thank you so much. I can see little Jenny in the car getting all excited.
Oh my gosh. I don't know what it was about that, of just, I think also having an adult, a parent that's like totally at the whim of the child, like following the whims of the children is really beautiful.
It is.
So, but yeah, can we then begin to tune into what our inner child is asking of us, even, without the mind saying, oh, that's childish, or oh, that's silly, or oh, that's not art, blah, blah, blah. No, what? Yeah. Where do we want to go? Where do we want to explore?
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
This has been awesome.
Totally.
Totally. Bringing the 80s back.
Totally, dude.
Well, I just want to mention before we go, I want to make sure that you link your book if you can. So
Absolutely.
that will be in the description below, right? That'll be in the description.
Yes. Yes.
Um, and I
The show
also want
notes.
to, yeah, the show notes. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that um, folks know that we have an active Instagram account. So please join us there if you haven't yet. We
Yes.
like to show images. We have some images on deck for what we were just talking about. So we're gonna share those. And then starting November 1, we are going to be, well, actually, maybe a little sooner. We're at least going to start opening it. But we have an online community that we are starting,
Yes.
and we are very excited about it. A way to sort of bring the studio back when we were brick and mortar, bring it to the online realm as much as we can. And I don't know, I'm just very, very excited about it. So we'll have
Yes.
information there too about that.
And you want to share the name of that stuff?
Um,
Our Soul Nectar community.
Soul Nectar, yes. I'm like, I got stage fright. I'm like, bong.
So yes, please join us for our Soul Nectar community. We're so excited to be launching this. I mean, I'm so ready for more, even online community. I think it's just so important.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. Me too.
Awesome.
All right. Well,
All right. Thank you all, as always, for tuning in. And yeah, of course, as always, please leave, if you haven't yet, please leave a review or rating. Really helps us get the word out. And yeah, thanks for
absolutely.
listening.
Thank you so much. Until next time.
Till next time.